This is clarity first. Silence is one of the hardest things to sit inside, not because it's loud, but because it's empty. And most people don't struggle with noise, they struggle with emptiness. Imagine this: you've been talking every day. There is flow, there's warmth, messages feel easy. You wake up and there's usually something there. Then one day, nothing. No message, no explanation, just quiet. Now nothing dramatic has happened. There was no argument, no tension, no clear shift, just space. And that space immediately becomes heavy. Not because of what it is, but because of what your mind starts doing inside it. You replay conversations, you check the last message, you analyze tone, you wonder if you were too much, too distant, too warm, too cold. You start filling the silence with imagination. Or you feel the urge to reach a small text, something light, just to keep it normal. Not because you need to say something, but because the quiet feels unstable. This is the moment that matters, not the silence itself, your response to it. Silence needs room, real room. Not a few minutes of pretending you're calm while internally rehearsing outcomes. Not a few hours before sending something to balance the energy. Room. Let silence speak as far as it needs to, without reaching out to reduce it, without performing indifference, without building internal theater. No imagined conclusions, no invented narratives, no assigning emotions to someone who has not expressed any. Silence reveals rhythm. If there was real consistency underneath, silence settles naturally. If the connection was carried mostly by momentum, silence stretches, and stretching reveals capacity. Sometimes silence doesn't produce depth, it produces orbiting. Someone stays near, watches, lingers, but never steps forward. Orbiting is not stability, it's proximity without authorship, movement without commitment, presence without decision. If you respond to orbiting, you convert proximity into access. But if you don't entertain it, silence continues doing its work. And eventually, the next real step appears, either direct action or disappearance, but something concrete. Silence long enough always produces the next visible pattern, not necessarily the outcome you want, but the evidence you need. Here's what most people never see. When you rush to fill silence, you interrupt information. You prevent the pattern from completing itself. You remove the tension before it clarifies anything. If someone values the connection, they step back in. If someone was unsure, silence exposes that. If someone was only carried by intensity, silence slows them down. But if you bridge the gap every time, you never find out what would have happened if you had stayed still. You end up stabilizing something that may not have had stability on its own. Silence is not rejection by default. Rejection is clear. Rejection speaks. Silence is exposure. Exposure of depth, exposure of follow through, exposure of pace. One quiet day does not erase consistent behavior, but in the absence of consistency, one quiet day feels like a lapse. And that's important to see clearly. Silence also exposes you, your steadiness, your impulse control, your tolerance for uncertainty. Can you let something breathe without managing it? Can you allow space without trying to correct it? There is a quiet strength in being able to sit inside silence without reacting, not because you don't care, not because you're playing a game, but because you are steady enough to let reality unfold without interfering. Most people don't struggle with silence itself, they struggle with the discomfort it brings up, the uncertainty, the loss of control, the not knowing. And that discomfort pushes them to react, to reach, to clarify, to fix, to reopen. Growth in dating isn't about reacting faster, it's about reacting less. It's about being willing to sit inside discomfort long enough for clarity to form. If you cannot sit inside silence without destabilizing yourself, you will constantly try to stabilize the situation. And when you are busy stabilizing the situation, you cannot see clearly. Understanding what silence means matters. Not so you can decode him, but so you stop destabilizing yourself. When you stop feeling the silence, something shifts. When you stop feeling the silence, you stop negotiating your position. You stop performing. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop adjusting your energy to maintain momentum. You begin observing who returns, who stabilizes, who fades, who never had depth to begin with. Silence is information, but only if you let it finish speaking. Not for days of games, not for dramatic effect, but long enough for the pattern to reveal itself. The goal is not to punish, not to test, not to withdraw, is to stop interfering. When silence appears, stay steady. No internal stories, no emotional forecasting, no gap filling behavior, just observation. And what happens next will tell you more than any explanation ever could. Clarity first, then meaning, then movement.